Sri Lanka can be identified as a rapidly developing country in South Asia. It's world famous for not only just because of their natural resources but also for their sports such as cricket, athletics, rugby, volleyball, swimming, weightlifting, and bodybuilding. So today we are going to talk about the sports industry in Sri Lanka.
Hi everyone, myself is Oshani Ganegada from group number 9. So today we are going to talk about the impact of COVID-19 on sports industry in Sri Lanka, mainly focusing on motorsports. So let's see who is going to be our guest today.
He marked his milestone as the champion of N1 championship held in Japan in 1995 and in 1997 became the first non-Japanese Asane to compete in the Japan top-level Formula Nippon. He was the champion of Malaysia Supercar Series in 2006 and 2007 in a row and was the first runner-up at Aston Martin Asia Cup in 2008 and 2009 in a row. Further, he was the first runner-up at Lamborghini Super Trofeo Asian Series in 2014 and 2015 and could manage to win the championship in 2016 and 2017. He is the founder of Dilantha Racing with 5 noted drivers. In 2012, the Sri Lanka Auto Sports Association awarded the National Colours Award and special recognition to him for his contribution to motorsports, representing Sri Lanka in the international arena at the National Awards presentation 2011. He was awarded by President Mr. Mathaipala Sirisena as the runner-up Presidential Award to Dilantha Racing for being the most outstanding leisure sports provider of the year 2015 inches and also for being the most outstanding sportsman of the year 2015. Further, he was awarded as the Sri Lankan of the Year in Sports category hosted by Ada Adarina in 2018. So ladies and gentlemen, please welcome our guest of the day, Mr. Dilantha Malagamuwa.
According to the introductory videos, you already know here is Dilantha Malagamuwa, and we can move to the discussion and will be a great experience for you. Good evening sir, we warmly welcome you to our interview. Let's move to the questions.
Good evening.
My first question is, what is mean by sports as a big picture, and what is the significance for motor racing industry for the world as well and Sri Lanka as a country?
Sports, when you say sports, I mean, I respect every sports and I think every person should do a sport. One thing is you'll be physically, you'll be doing well, and then mentally, plus you will learn a lot of good things in sports like discipline and how to take up the win and losses and how to improve yourself, your target, your focus, your motivational and your commitment. There's a lot to learn in sports, and I think every child should do sports. And motorsports is a little bit different from other sports because it's a big industry if you compare to other sports, because the world's largest manufacturers, spare parts manufacturers, tire manufacturers, so many different kind of people get involved in this, and they are all world famous, and everyone wants to win in motor racing. And so that's a big battle because all the top manufacturers in the world compete with each other to maintain their status, and winning a race is the status for them. So it's a very big industry, and there's a lot of involvements in motorsports. It's just not driving but so many other things to do. So without all these good things together, you cannot win a race. So I think it's very different from other sports, but everything is sports, so I respect every sports, but as I said, it's totally different because it's the most expensive sports in the world and one of the most glamorous sport in the world as well.
So my second question is, what's the structure of the motor racing industry before the COVID-19 and why those are mostly associated with European economic?
So it's not only Europe, it's America, and it's in Asia. If you see, Japan is one of the biggest places for motorsports is Japan, because they are manufacturers. You get Toyota, Honda, Nissan, they all have race cars. So it's Europe, Asia and also America. If you see, America is a big place for motorsports, and also Australia, New Zealand. So it's a combination. It's all over the world. Motorsports is very popular. And before COVID, I think as I told you, we have a lot of championships, different series. You get F1, you get GT, you get cup racing, so you get Formula F2, you get Formula 3, you get Formula 4. So there are so many different races, and they divide into three sections. One is the European Championship, one is the Asian Championship, and then one is the American Championship. Plus, they have the World Championship. So there are so many categories and different races. And as I told you, it's a lot of money involvement in motorsports. So motorsports was doing very well before the COVID, and unfortunately after the pandemic, but still we raced last year with the pandemic situation. Only thing was the spectators were not allowed to come into the circuits, but even our races were delayed. But then we had the races, even Formula One. They had races, but they had to skip some of the races. But I think motorsports was one of the first things during the COVID, which took place, and we started competing. So it was a big impact, but they never stopped.
Sir, my question is, as per concern, it is essential to have sponsors to conduct a sport competition. But due to this deadly virus, all of the economic, including China, were affected seriously. And with this context, how it possible to find sponsors for sport to carry out smoothly?
I think it's how they took up, like as I told you, most of the racing teams are backed by the manufacturers like Lamborghini, Ferrari, Porsche, Nissan, Toyota. They're all backed by them. So they had enough, they have enough funds to do that. And I think the people who were affected was the private teams, because they couldn't find enough sponsors. But like for the manufacturers, tire manufacturers, they all still they could sponsor, because if you say for tires, during the pandemic, everyone, you need transportation. So people have to use tires, So for them, it was not affected. I think there was a growth in that. So, and some people, even during the bad times, they need to keep going, So I think people usually, when there's something negative happening, people also think negative and they don't move. But some people, even in the bad days, they think very positive. So I think that was one of the things that all the teams and the manufacturers were still positive, and that's why they could run the championships. So, but as I told you, the private companies are sponsored by different companies, So they were a lot of people, a lot of companies were affected, so they couldn't come up with sponsors. So we had less participants last year. I think there was about 40% less, but nevertheless the championships ran, and they had, but if you see Formula One, they had all the teams running. So I think our races and GT races, they had less competitors, but even in the GT races, there were almost 45 competitors, So that was not really affected. So I think still they are positive in motor racing.
Sir, my next question is, what are the problems faced by your travel crew under the COVID-19 pandemic situation?
Go through the quarantine and all that, but in Europe, we didn't have this issue, because once we have a PCR, we were allowed to go to, so we could travel. We had to travel to all the European countries by car, so we didn't have an issue. And also with the PCR certificate, we were all allowed to go to any circuit. So that was not a big problem in traveling in Europe. But coming out of Europe to here was a disaster, because when you come back, you have to go for quarantine for 14 days or 28 days, I think, that time when I came back. But in Europe, we didn't have that restriction. As long as you have a PCR test, we could travel. So in Europe, the championship travel there, I mean, they go by road to all the countries. So all the big trucks and all that, they could travel. So not many used they didn't use flying, but most of them rode to each country by road. So that was not a big impact on traveling in Europe. But I have to tell you, in Asia, all the races were cancelled, and in the US, all the races were held, and in Europe, all the races were held. So only in Asia, all the races were cancelled, because the problem is in Asia, you have to fly, or the cars has to go by content to different countries. So it was an issue, but in Europe there was no issue at all.
As expert, sir, do you think that we are supposed to do structural changes in the sports events, I mean rules and regulation or something, to make sure the survival of the sports?
Structural support, I think, like in Europe, the structure has never changed. It's still there, but only they have to follow some regulations for the pandemic. But they all follow the regulations, and the structure has been the same, in the sport. So only thing is, the biggest problem is traveling, and that also they have found the ways to do that. And only thing that every sport was lacking was the spectators. So at the grounds or at the circuit, but then I think everyone was watching the races on TV. So only thing that you missed was the spectators at ground.
As renowned professional, I would like to know what sort of insight that you can provide to increase the appetite of people to make their interest on sports events, as well as I would like to know how players maintain their physical and mental confidence within this pandemic situation.
Yeah, as I told you, physical fitness, of course, you can do even in a room, wherever you are. Because if you know your way around, it can be a small room, but you can do your physical fitness, doesn't matter. And mentally, of course, yes, it's the same thing. Your meditations, your visual training. So you can do all that. It's not an excuse. You can all do that. As long as you are committed and you are positive, you can still do the same thing. Because, we didn't do any testing before the races, but everyone was on the same pace. No one was slow. So because you are mentally prepared and physically prepared, so when you get in the car, you are spot on. You do your time. So I didn't see anyone going slower because they didn't have testing, because everyone was mentally. When you are a professional, you have to work out your way to go and perform. So there are no excuses when you're a professional to go and say that I had this and I had that. So we had a lot of issues, because for me, in Sri Lanka, we don't have a circuit, so I didn't have a place to go and test. But the drivers in Europe, they have circuits in every country, so they had the chance of going and testing. So we have to see the situation, and in racing, the most important thing is finishing a race and getting points. So we were all able to do that.
Sir, why they only have very few names of the Sri Lankan players in the world sport, including motorsport?
One thing is, it's very expensive sport, so and unfortunately we can't find sponsors in Sri Lanka. So at my early stages, I had a dream of after watching a movie when I was 16, I wanted to become a world champion, and my father was against it. So when I was 20, I ran away from home to Japan to fulfill my dream. And when I arrived in Japan, I knew I even in Sri Lanka, I knew it's expensive sport. But in Japan, when I went to start racing, it was, I didn't expect that expensive, the sport to be. And then it was very difficult for me to find a sponsor, because I was no one. So I had to work. I used to work 22 hours a day, make money, and to fulfill my dream. So I could do it, If I did it, If I could do it, I think everyone else also can do it. But it's only the commitment. If you have the courage and commitment to do anything, everything is possible. But most of there are a lot of Sri Lankans who is talented, but only thing is they are in a comfort zone, so they don't want to cross barriers. So if you want to achieve uh, things in life, I mean, when you're in Sri Lanka, you think to go overseas and win a championship, you think it's impossible. But it's possible. But then you have to commit yourself and you have to work really hard for it, and it's possible. So I think now we have Ishan Pires, Mr. David Pires' son, so he's also competing in Asia. So for him was a good, he's very lucky because his father is very rich, so he can support. But this year, actually Ashan has raced in Dubai and many other countries and also with me in Europe. So this year, I will be joining with Ashan and we will be competing as a Sri Lankan team in the Lamborghini Super Trophy Championship in Europe. And for others, I think they are in a comfort zone and they think, oh, that's enough and just racing here. And like when you have to have dreams, and then you have to achieve higher. I mean, without a dream, for me, I think if you don't have a dream, the life is very useless, So when you have dreams, you have to fulfill them, but not just dreaming, but you have to work hard for it. So I think anything is possible if you have the courage and the commitment to do it. So that's the only thing that setbacks people not to do it because they're in a comfort zone.
Sir, what sort of aids that a government can provide to facilitate the sports industry to bounce back to the situation where it was before this pandemic situation?
I think we should not put the blame to the government, because even in Sri Lanka, the sports ministry always spends few billion rupees for the athletes, for every sport. So I think it's the duty of the sportsman to be ready for it, So you cannot, it's not the government. Government will always, some sports they will really, I mean, like athletics and other sports, they will, they support. And even during the pandemic, you saw we had the LPL and we had so many other sports doing. So I think it's not the government, So the athletes or the competitors should be ready for that. As I said, they should prepare themselves at home, physical fitness. As I told you, it can be done inside a room, So you have to be physically fit, you have to be mentally fit, and you have to, as I told you, you have to have a vision, So even if you are staying at home, you can still prepare yourself. So, and then once the pandemic is over and when it's open, you'll be ready to compete. So I think government is doing the best to have all, because with the new minister, he's doing his best to promote sports in the best way, and I think things will change in a big way. And I think the competitors and the athletes, they have to prepare themselves.
Thank you, sir. As you said before, sportsmen has to prepare themselves and government spend millions of money for the sports. But sir, do you think that government should do a specific thing for the motor racing industry?
I would love to if they do that, So, honestly, motorsports is not sponsored by the government. Actually, even for me, I carry Sri Lanka flag and visit Sri Lanka for tourism. I've done many years, but the only sponsorship I got was last year, and the year before I got one sponsored by Tourism Board, and last year I was sponsored by Tourism Board. I got at least 50% of that money. So, and they get a lot of publicity, because if you see motor racing, it's televised over 100 countries and billions of people watch television. And then, so we get publicity, so I think if they can spend more on motor racing, it will be lovely. And then, as I told you, motorsports is the most, it's glamour sports, it's one of the glamorous sports. And all the big boys in the world, I mean, all the big companies, manufacturers, they all do this sport. So even in Sri Lanka, so if you have a proper international circuit, that will bring so much of publicity for Sri Lanka. And with our racing, we give a lot of publicity for Sri Lanka. And I think uh, Sri Lanka government should think more about motorsports because, as I told you, it's the most expensive and the glamorous sports in the world. And in those competition, we win with a Sri Lankan flag. So Sri Lanka gets a lot of publicity. So I don't put the blame on the government for not sponsoring or anything, but it's my duty to give the publicity for Sri Lanka. So being such a small country, we don't have any car manufacturer, but still we went and we won the world and we beat everyone, So I think I'm very proud about it.
Thank you, sir. You know that we have Gajaba Supercross, Ghana Supercross, like many other lot of motorsports events, and we have higher standard players like Gayan Sandarwan. And sir, do you think that as a Sri Lanka we have enough capability to extend these motor racing events, and through it can we extend our players' performance?
Yes, as I told you, only thing is we don't have a proper circuit here in Sri Lanka. We don't have international circuit, but we have many races. I think we have over 30 races here. I think it's too much. We should have less races and long races, So we have to be very professional. So we have to run races according to the world standards. So what we run here and the races that is in the world, our standards are totally different. So we should be able to, as I told you, more than 24 events we have here. For me, in overseas, I have only 7 weekends, but here there is 24 weekends or more. So we have many races, but nothing is done properly. So they should run proper racing. I mean, same level as now. See, if you see cricket, we have T20, we have the ODIs, and we have test matches. So everything is same as other countries. But in Sri Lanka, motor racing is totally different from other countries. So we run in a different, different standards. So we should also lift those standards and run according to the world standards. Then our drivers or riders, when they go overseas, they will be very compatible to other drivers and riders. But I should say the motorcycle events, like as you mentioned, Gayan Sandarwan, and we have a lot of motorcycle riders, so they run according to the international standards, which is really good. That's why we have these good riders.
As per the health expert, this pandemic situation will last 2 to 3 years. So could you brief us how would this affect to the sport industry, including motor racing?
Actually, motor racing will not stop. They will go on, and they will, they have to abide by the rules and regulations, but they will not stop. So they will carry on. Last year, our championship delayed, but this year it's going to start on time, and it will be, we have scheduled, so we have a calendar. So it will be run according to the calendar. And even today I contacted Lamborghini, and we are running according to the calendar. So I think in Europe and other countries, the pandemic won't be an issue. And even in Sri Lanka, if you see now, we have the LPL, and I think all the other sports also will be continued. So as long as there are rules and regulations even for, you keep your social distance and things, and your mask and all that. So if you, there are health regulations. So if you obey the health regulations, I don't think there's any barriers to stop having any sports event.
All your hard work and already become an icon of motor racing in Sri Lanka, we would like to know what are the challenges you faced, what is your advice to the younger generation out there, especially in love with motor racing?
Yeah, as I told you, I want to see more Sri Lankans coming and getting involved in motorsports, because as I told you, it's a big industry. It's not only becoming a racing driver. You can be a mechanic, you can be an engineer, you can be a data engineer, you can do the logistics, you can do social media, you can become a manager, you can produce parts. So there's so many things in motorsports. So even if you're not willing to do a driver, there are so many other things that you can do, and they are paid very well in motorsports. So even if you're a mechanic, if you're, as I told you, engineer, tire engineer, data engineer, so many things to do. And it's all because, as I told you, everyone is in a comfortable zone. They call me and ask, how can I start racing? How to do racing? So when they ask me, I know they are not committed, because the person who wants to do it, he will, he will inquire himself. Now, when I started racing, we didn't have any social media or internet or nothing. We have to physically go and look for it. But so we were hungry, so we went, and I went physically and to find everything. But nowadays, you just take your your smartphone, and you can find out everything. And with all that, they are asking silly questions. How can I race? Where to start and all that. So I know when someone asks some silly questions, it's not serious. But the serious people will do their homework, find everything, and they will start racing. So that's why I say, if you are really interested, you don't do because you see it's like something interesting or very because you get fame and things, but you have to do everything for your self-satisfaction. So most of the young kids today, they're just doing it to show off, so that I'm a racer, I'm an engineer or something. But you have to do for your self-satisfaction. I want to show, and also when you do it for your self-satisfaction, you have to have a goal, you have to have an aim, you have to have a dream. So all that is there account. If you have everything as such, you can, there'll be better drivers who can do better than me. So it's nothing impossible, it's if there is a will, there is a way. So people are not willing to do it. They're very lazy and want to get everything free and easy. That won't happen, so you have to work hard for it.
Actually, this discussion is very interesting, sir. But unfortunately, time has crossed to continue. So it is the end of our discussion. As a university student, I think we are really lucky to conduct a discussion with Sir Dilantha Malagamuwa, key personality of motor racing industry in Sri Lanka. I really appreciated for accepting our request and join with us, sir. Thank you very much for giving us your valuable time and sharing important information about motor racing industry, even though you have a really tough schedule. COVID-19 is very unexpected pandemic situation for all world, and we all wish that this pandemic will soon disappear world and the world will recover. Once again, thank you very much, sir. Join with us and have a great time ahead. And thank you very much all. Stay safe.
Thank you for inviting me, because it's good, it's always good to listen to people. I listen to people, I listen to their stories, because every story has something to learn. And so it's good to talk to people with good results, and you will learn something. So I think by talking to me, maybe something that you have not achieved in life, you can listen to someone, and then you can get some good, you only have to get the good parts out of that. So I always love to speak to the Sri Lankan children. So I always go and speak to all the universities or the schools, motivate them, because when my younger days, I saw a movie and I was inspired to become a racing driver. So maybe someone listening to my story, they can change their lifestyle, So I love to do that, and thank you for arranging it. And I always would love to speak to our children, because you are the young generation is the ones who is going to build this country, So I want you all to be very optimistic, positive, and live without stress.